Really? So, finally ready.
You know what, man?
Yeah.
You know what? I moved to Asheville, and I think it was about time I moved here a couple of years ago. And it's like fucking 6 months of you just being like, "Did you read Child by Tiger? Read Child by Tiger. Read Child by Tiger. Did you read it? Did you
Every
read it? Did you read it? Did you
fucking
read it? Did you read it?" And eventually, it's just like, "Fuck you! I'm never reading this goddamn motherfucking story again." And now
every
I've read it
fucking day,
twice
dude.
in a day. Yeah, it was
Every
every
day I was
fucking
just,
day.
every day. Sometimes multiple times per day. I would just fuck with you. So like you're living right there by the fucking guy, and you've only read one fucking short story by him. Are you fucking kidding me? You know? The guy's written so many great fucking short stories, and you're just gonna have read the one. I was like, just at
The
least
only
read.
one I needed to read.
I was like, at least read Child by Tiger. At
Oh my
least read
gosh.
two. At least read two. At least see the diversity that the guy had in him. You know, as far as what kinds of stories he could tell. And
Look, so I read this story and I'm like halfway through, I'm like, what the fuck is this shit Craig wanted me to read? And I'm
yeah,
like, it's the complete opposite of the
yep,
Lost Boy.
yeah. That's why I wanted you to read it.
It,
Oh,
it's not only that, it's just a goddamn complete mess of a story. I
yeah,
mean, I look, I'll say I did like it. I do like it, but it's just, man, it's just a fucking weird one.
yeah. So, oh, how to even begin talking about this fucking thing, man? I mean, um, fucking, you want to talk about a left hook out of nowhere? It's this story, you know. Especially at that time, because these things weren't happening, or maybe they were happening, but they definitely weren't being reported as often as they are now.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that is a interesting point. This did happen. I mean, I looked it up. I was like, he wrote a lot of nonfiction, fictionalized nonfiction. So I was like,
yep,
this shit probably happened. And sure enough, 1906, some
yep,
crazy motherfucker got drunk and shot up Asheville.
yeah. I mean, the story of America, really, right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm playing Red Dead Redemption now,
Man, that's
and
the only game you play. You're always playing a damn game. I actually want to play it again.
dude, it's so good.
It
But
is
yeah,
amazing.
it's that's life in the Wild West, where the only law and order that we had was, you know, really was uh mob rule.
Yeah,
And
Cowboys. That's what happened. A hundred some odd townspeople chased him down into Fletcher, which is just south of Asheville, like 8 miles. I guess he ran in a couple days. They found him there.
they shot him to hell,
They
and
shot him to hell.
they
Yep.
take him back like he's a trophy. Uh, which really, I mean, like, by the way, while I'm reading, I was reading this again today too, in the library, because it's where I go to write, because I have to get away from everyone.
Yeah.
And when I'm reading it, some bitch behind me starts to, like, this happens all the time in public libraries. Some bitch behind me just starts a fucking fight over her right to have a phone conversation. Some guy's like gathering all the stuff, and he's yelling at her. He's like, I can't fucking do my work if I got you fucking talking in my ear. And she's like, well, God gave me a mouth. I'm allowed to talk. And she's just talking everyone down. The librarian's coming over. She's like, guys. He's like, don't be saying guys. It's God. And I'm like, if
Is,
these two idiots had a gun, if one of them had a gun, it'd just start popping off right now.
is this the
You know?
library across the street from Trump?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yikes,
But
man.
it happens at every
It's
fucking
sandwiched
public
between the
library.
jail and Trump. So I mean,
Yeah.
what a place to write.
Yeah. Total
Uh,
affluence and total poverty and desperation.
right.
And but that's essentially uh South Florida for you. I can't tell you how many times I go to a library to write, and I just stop whatever I'm doing and just start transcribing what I'm hearing out of my ear. You know,
Dude, you hear some weird shit down there.
Well, it's because that's where the bums hang out. They just hang out in public libraries because it's so fucking hot during the day. You know, go inside the library and it's cool, and you can fuck around on the computer and watch cartoons and shit.
Yeah.
Apply for jobs, but
So how did that did you finish the
I just,
story?
no, I just got up and yeah, I mean, I finished. I had already finished the story. I just got up and left. But holy
Yeah.
shit, man! It's just America. It's just if ever there was, like you said, the better, or not the better, but the other half of his art and the Lost Boy, which is all about the beauty of humanity and the tenderness of humanity and um the fragility of life and about loving your brother so much that you want to remember him. You just want to remember.
Yeah.
Here's another
Yeah.
story. And it's almost written with the same kind of tenderness. You know, you can still see Thomas Wolfe's tenderness in how he portrays Dick,
Yeah.
especially in the beginning.
Yeah, he's
You
like
know,
teaching the boys how to box, how to play, how to hold a football. There's something else too, but yeah, it's weird. It's a weird start of the story.
how to shoot. He teaches them how to shoot.
Oh, shooting, yeah, or yeah, something like that. Man, what a weird way to start the story, though. He like does humanize them a little bit, doesn't he, with the kids? And he gets into like really minute detail with all the kids' names, and I wonder
Yeah.
why he does that. Not only there, but like later in the story, he's like describing the police officers. He's like, it's almost like he's honoring the actual story. Like from what I read, I just read a little quick web page about it. He was just a kid when it happened, and but he was there. Like he heard the gunshots, so he
I'm
knew all
sure.
these people that were affected by it, and killed. At least like through his friends and everything. So maybe that has something to do with it being kind of like a non-fictiony fictionalized. What is this, by the way? This is kind of, it's a little off from like what I've read about the story. Like
I mean,
the main character anyway is like not the same. The description I read was that he was just some fucking guy who escaped from jail, who was here for a day and then started, got drunk, got into a fight and started shooting everybody. In this story, of
maybe
course, he's like humanized more.
right. Maybe what it was is Thomas Wolfe was like, I wonder what would have happened if this is somebody that I knew.
Yeah.
You know. So Thomas Wolfe exists in this place where it's so close to what happened that it's hard not to call it something like creative nonfiction. You know,
Mhm.
especially The Lost Boy. Uh, you mentioned that all these characters, like the minute details of these characters' names, and because he was writing about his childhood friends, and he wrote other stories about them also.
He was writing for them too, probably.
Yeah, and that's where his art takes place. Is like in this place. I think it's the same with me too. It's so close to nonfiction that it's hard to call it anything other than creative nonfiction because you can tell he lied about some things here and there.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of your kind of style. A lot of sometimes you write like pretty close to what actually happened, at least what I could imagine actually happened, or anybody. But I mean, you could tell me, I guess, how close you are to Thomas Wolfe in that regard. But
well,
yeah,
it's a lot of it's just me coming from the school of Luke and Jonathan Mundell, and Nick LaRocca and
right.
everybody that we became a part of is the best art that was coming out of our group was stories about our families and
Past,
I had
yeah,
I had a tumultuous family also. I was always going through shit, especially with my little brother and my father, and how my mom compartmentalized everything that was happening. You know,
yeah,
so
yeah. How could
I
you
just
not
think,
write about that shit?
Yeah, I think people that live like Ron Carlson, um, and these kind of guys who lived in suburbia and they went to private schools. I think it's easier for them to imagine totally fictional um, scenarios and totally fictional people because they weren't dealing with so much heartache every day in their day to day lives, and they weren't so close to it either. These are also people who, shipped away to school. Tobias Wolfe
Yeah.
was shipped away to a private school. So they just gave them distance from the thing. Thomas Wolfe, for the longest time, lived in Asheville. I mean, there's a reason he, in all of his stories, all of them that are worth the shit, take place in Asheville, take place in North
Yeah.
Carolina.
Yeah, Look
Um,
Homeward Angel, also the book he wrote.
yeah.
Yeah, what you're saying like makes a lot of sense. Like when you're going through the shit, it's hard to like really give a fuck about anything else. You know what I mean? Even if you're not actively going through it, you're still changed by it or like affected by it. Your brother dies, you're gonna be thinking about that shit for 10 years. You're
Yeah.
not gonna be imagining somebody else's brother, or maybe you will, I don't know, eventually. But yeah,
To write
I guess
about
I
anything
guess
else other than what you want to write about is disingenuous. And if what, like, for me, it's not some conscious decision. I don't think it was for him either. It's more like
right.
I need to understand why this thing happened. I need to understand why this man would commit these acts. And by the end, the truth is, he has to come to terms with, we're never going to understand why. Um, and most people don't even care. I mean, that's the sad part is the whole town, nobody really cared in the whole town until after the fact, long after the fact, why this guy did these things. What they cared about most was killing him and parading him around town, which really, in a way,
Yeah.
makes them worse than him. Is
I
the
wanted to ask you about that. Yeah, like the end of the story, the narrator is pretty detached. Like he does get like start talking about his philosophy on like evil and the duality of men or people and the good and evil in them.
right.
And then but in that particular part, it kind of I guess it lends to that to a reading. I mean, how did you read that? What is he trying to say about this town and this culture?
I think he's trying to say that. Well, all right. So, what do I think the point of the story is?
Yeah,
What do I
yeah.
think he's
Let's
trying to say
go
about
right
people?
for it.
I think that Thomas Wolfe was very anti-racist, especially for his time. Um,
He,
by the way, once
mhm.
again, it's a short story. It could not be taught in a grad class
I
without.
know, man. There's a lot of problematic shit in this story, dude. I was thinking about that a lot, especially my second read through. Like, what the fuck? Like, there's a lot of racist shit in here, but he's writing about a really racist town, really racist culture.
Right.
Um,
How do you write about that honestly without painting it in its most brutal pictures?
yeah, yeah, and the
And
ending
I'm
is
sorry,
definitely brutal.
but for all of our fucking doogads and whatever the fuck and all of our fucking quote unquote social progress, we're just as racist now as we ever were. Like we
It's
still live
tr-
in a we still live in a very fucking racist culture.
yeah,
And we still live around a whole bunch of racists. Um and we have if you're gonna write about people, you have to talk about it honestly. And and it's
so
just I don't know. I think the problem with not to bring that whole issue up, but just to talk about this story, I think
in the story.
a lot of the reasons that this story isn't talked about is because it looks and it gives a portrait of America that's too brutally honest to look at. I mean, even Faulkner never touched anything quite like this, dude. This is a story about a black man who worked for a white family, and
Right, yeah, right after slavery ended, right? Like 30 years or whatever.
and befriended a bunch of kids in the neighborhood, and they all loved him. But something happened, and nobody in the town knows what. But something happened between him and this married woman, whom he also worked with, and her husband. And he went on a killing spree. He ended up killing her husband and half the town. Maybe not half the town, but a lot of people in the town. I forgot. I meant to look up the total death count.
Well, all right. So in the account I read about the actual event, 5 people. In the
Yeah.
story, it's 5 people in the scene of the town, and he kills like 4 more as they close in on him in the woods.
Right. So it's about 9 or 10, more or less.
Yeah.
And the whole time, Thomas Wolfe is writing about him with the same grace that he is in the beginning. With the same tenderness, even though the story takes a dramatic shift in the middle when he goes on that killing spree. All of a sudden, it becomes a minute recollection of every gesture that the guy made as he was making his way out of town, and how the story spread around the town, and how the hunt closed in on him, and them shooting him and stringing him up and lynching him after he was already dead and shooting him more. They exhausted all of their ammunition on him. I mean, I think the point of this story is that we're all waiting for a guy like that to emerge to unleash our own violence and rage. We're all just waiting. That's why I had to leave that fucking library, because everybody in the library was starting to scream at this bitch to shut the fuck up, and she just wouldn't do it. And I'm like, I have to get the fuck out of here, because if she yells at me, I might just punch her.
Yeah, man. Good thing you left, dude.
It's like I'm about to start teaching next fucking week.
Really? You are?
Yeah, just 3 classes.
Oh, at least they reached back out to you, man. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't teach very well if you get locked up for punching some lady at the library.
Yeah. Through that, man. Through that.
Oh man.
That's the point of the story, though, isn't it? Is want to say hi to John?
Hi, John.
Hey, Finn. That's Finn.
Yeah.
Hey, Finn. Wait. All right, pause. Where you were? The point of the story is what exactly? Did you say?
We're all just waiting for somebody to point the finger at and take our own violence out on, and have it be justified.
There is some like undercurrent of like that. I don't know. It's kind of explained partially by how you are talking about how Wolfe handles the narrator. He never like really condemns Dick for doing this, but he subtly does condemn the town for doing what they did to him. Like they're almost worse for like making a show, like putting 300 bullets in this guy and hanging him up for everyone to see. Like, and there's this weird little undercurrent of like this town created this man. This man is mentally unwell. First of all, it's never said, by the narrator, but like the way how he reads the Bible and comes out with tears in his eyes and like Armageddon is coming, that's what he's saying and shit like that. Like this guy is definitely off the fucking rails. And
that's yet another thing that we don't have an answer for even now is what do we do with? Go ahead.
Just to go into that a little bit, like, what do you think he's trying to say about like this racist culture through the metaphor of snow? Like, do you remember on page 6, he goes into this diatribe about snow being like this special thing in the South. It's like a thing that is from the North or whatever. He says snow in the South is wonderful. It's a kind of magic and mystery that has nowhere else. And the reason for that is that it comes to people in the South not as the grim, unyielding tenant of the winter's keep, but as a strange, wild visitor from the secret North. It comes to them from darkness, to their own special and most secret soul there in the South. It brings to them the thrilling isolation. Sorry, that's like a weird typo in my story. through them the thrilling isolation of their own white mystery. What the fuck is he talking about when he's talking about snow, man?
Their own white mystery.
It brings to
Well,
them the thrilling isolation of their own white mystery. Is it because is it like they're blind to all the fucking pain they've caused to black people in this country? Like, it's like he's talking about race without talking about race a little bit.
Well, let me ask you this: you live in the South. Have you like lived through a snowstorm? Not a bad one, but one that like blanketed the woods.
Yeah, yeah. Last year there was abnormal amount of snow. But yeah, for sure.
Not in town, but out in the woods. Did you ever look at it and like just appreciate how perfect everything looked with the snow there before anyone? Because in the cities and everything, it gets muddied really quick. But in the South, in the woods, even in the North, in the woods, I'm sure, and where there's not a whole lot of industry, it just blankets everything, and everything just looks perfect for a moment. And this is, of course, right before Dick, because he kills the first guy on the first day of snow, right?
Yeah, it's well, it's so weird. Like the movement's a little weird there, but yeah, this is right before that. Like it's kind of like the transition from him interacting with the kids and like kind of characterizing Dick a little bit to this snow falling. The night that kids like find or see the gun, and then it goes from that to this weird description of snow, and then to the shooting for the rest of the story. It's on page 6. I don't actually know what version you have. I got the one you emailed a while back. But I'm on page 6.
Well, think about it. You know, also the snow plays an integral role in capturing him. He can't, like, they know that they have him because it's too cold for him to survive on his own. But he's also just talking about the innocence of Dick and the innocence of not knowing, you know, what's inside of him. The kids all think that he's this great guy, and maybe he is. And the innocence of the town. I've never had something like this happen to them before, and you can tell that they haven't because of how dumbly they go about trying to capture him. You know,
Right. Like,
I mean,
yeehaw, let's go get this guy. You know,
yeah,
these two guys are like half drunk. Like, we're gonna have some fun, and immediately one gets shot in the fucking arm, the other guy gets shot in a head or something like that. Man,
one of the guys in a window like raises a cane and tells him, you know, and yells at him like through the window. Like that, he's not even armed with anything. It's only because he's wearing a top hat that he doesn't get his head blown off.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, and the irony being now, you know, and I'm not to bring back the sour note of of our current day, but we go through one of these every couple of days in this country. So more innocent. So snow is kind of this beautiful thing, but it's also this really deadly thing that if you're not insulated from it, it will kill you.
Right.
A lot of Native Americans. I forget which one officially calls their so in Native American cultures in places where it gets really cold. I think a lot of them have the same concept of a Wendigo. Not every tribe calls it a Wendigo, but Wendigo is a fairly popular, fairly well known concept, and even in so a Wendigo is all right. So in a Native American culture, pre-industrial revolution, all this, you had to gather food for the winter, right? And you would only have enough food to survive the winter if everybody portioned out what they were supposed to eat.
Mm-hmm.
If one of them ate too much or ate more than their allotted share, they would call that person a Wendigo, and they would banish them from the tribe. And banishment in the wintertime is essentially a death sentence.
Yeah.
Because without the fire and without the warmth and without the ability to, what are you going to do? You can't hunt when it's 30 below zero. You can't. There's nothing to farm because everything's already been farmed and nothing's growing anymore, anyways. So you're basically fucked. And I think that's kind of what happened. Like, either one way or the other, Dick was fucked, is the thing. And the reality is, them lynching him like they did was probably a mercy killing as opposed to him freezing to death. Maybe he'd have gotten over to another town in the summer or in the fall or in the spring, but not with the weather being like it was. It'd have been a really slim chance
So
of him escaping.
yeah,
So
he
really,
is kind
all
of
they
like
had to do was nothing. Really, all they had to do was he didn't have a car, he didn't have a horse, he didn't have food, he didn't have provisions. They probably could have just let nature take its course, but their own murderous rage forced them out there to go and lynch this person and make a trophy out of him. And
yeah. It's weird. He is kind of like an outcast in this story. I mean, he's a servant
in
first of
every
all.
sense,
Like, yeah,
everything.
and eventually, yeah, he's like literally cast out through his own actions.
By the way,
Wow.
who taught him how to kill? Who taught him all these skills?
The army. Yeah. The army.
So the army is what is and was this thing that will teach you how to kill, but will not teach you how to survive in the outside. Like, there is no conflict resolution class in school, although there probably should be. In fact, there definitely should be. There just should be this thing where, okay, two grown men fall in love with the same woman. What's the proper response?
Yeah, the romantic triangle class.
Yeah.
The love
Yeah.
triangle class.
Two
God, that
women
would have
fall
been
in
a
love with
good
the
class
same
to have. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it happens. These things happen in life, and we have, like, there's no one you can go and talk to for the most parts who can give
Yeah,
you
if you're
honest
lucky, you have a Nick
perspective.
LaRocca.
Yeah, or you got a therapist charging you $100
Therapist.
an hour or $200 an hour.
Right.
But
Or your idiot friends who are like giving you the best advice.
yeah,
They're all just as ignorant as you on the situation.
this guy had nobody to talk to with his
Oh
problem.
yeah. He had the
He
kids,
like,
like
yeah,
what? He's gonna talk to
those
kids.
are his friends.
Who he's like
And,
also kind of subservient to. Like he talks to them like they're adults in like a cute way, but it's also kind of like fucking weird.
well, you have to wonder if that isn't something else that he just learned to get by in life, was
Yeah.
to treat everybody like they were superior to him. And it was another way to camouflage himself.
Yeah, survival.
And I
Form
think
of self-preservation, basically.
so many people in this world also, like, the only they think that the only solution to what ails them, to all their problems, all the answers are going to be found in the Bible. And he's over there talking about Armageddon and
Right.
the coming of, the second coming of Jesus, and that's going to put an end to all of our worldly woe.
And how do you live like that? This like weird
Yeah.
subservient. Like he's gonna go crazy. Like he went crazy. This is why like he shut up the town, and
Whatever
the town
happened
will
to him,
never like say, "Hey, we kind of fucking contributed to this guy in our own misery." Is that how we treated him?
well, we contribute to all of them, John. I think that's the other point of the story. Every killer that exists on this planet, we as a society have made through one way or another. We shaped them. We forced them into their ways of thinking, and we bolstered their worst compulsions. And when they acted out, we took delight in punishing them because
Right.
that's who we are. I was actually just talking to Leo about Charles Manson, um, whose real name, at least according to urban legend, his mom's last name was Maddox. It wasn't Manson, it was Maddox. And when she
Okay.
had Charles, they asked her, what's his name going to be? And she told them, just call him No Name.
What?
So supposedly
Ay,
on
ay,
the
ay.
birth certificate is No Name Maddox. That's his fucking name. And it was his
God.
uncle who finally just was like, a couple days later, was like, just call him Charles. And supposedly she tried to sell him to a waitress for a pitcher of beer.
Oh my goodness.
That's urban legend. What is known is that she went to prison for, I think, 6 years for trying to rob somebody at a diner with a bottle of ketchup. Uh,
So his mom was
um,
also batshit crazy.
batshit crazy. He had no father. Raised in orphanages, raised in juvenile detention centers. Went to prison at 16 for raping another boy. Um, Prison fucked him up really bad, and he came out the raving lunatic that you see in all the videos. And that's, by the way, that's a story of so many people in jail. So many of them grew up in
Yeah.
orphanages, grew up in juvenile detention centers, and the only thing that they know is um, is life in an institution. They can't function on the outside. When they go on the outside, all hell breaks loose. Um,
Yeah. And so little is known about like how mental health issues are passed from parent to parent. I mean, obviously a lot of it's genetic, but like when you grow up with a mom as fucked up as that, that's gonna fuck you up even more. You know what I mean? Like
right.
having that kind of upbringing. No name. My name. What did your mom wanted to call you? She didn't give a fuck. So my uncle just called me Charles. Ugh.
I mean,
No wonder he
it's
wanted people to admire him. No wonder he became a fucking
yeah,
murderous cult leader. You know, like Jesus.
yeah. Uh, he had the gift of gab, and he really actually had a lot of poetry in his music, and he did aspire to be a musician, but there was too much murder in him to make it through. And I think he was too scared of the limelight also, but that's another story. Um, I don't know. There's something to be said, I think, for uh, how bad people are at raising kids, especially in this country. We're really, really bad at it. Um,
Yeah, there's a class for you. How to raise a damn kid.
yeah,
Ugh.
which, by the way, there is no class for. There like so much of this thing that we call life is people just winging it. Like that idiot in the library. You know, she like there's no conflict resolution for her. Her way of dealing with conflict resolution is to just keep talking shit and keep talking shit and always have the last word. That's how she deals with life. That's how she feels superior to everyone. She's always right. Everybody else is always wrong. And so many people think like that. And um,
Yeah.
I mean, you see it. There's students like that. There's professors like that. There's cops like that. There's judges like that. Uh,
Yeah,
there's
it comes down
lawyers
to
like
kind of like a
that.
lack of empathy. I don't know what the. I mean, I've had that. I mean, I've been like that before. Like, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm not really like being considerate. Um, Usually, when you're younger, you kind of are hard headed like that. But some people, yeah, they grow older and they get positions of power and they're still fucking like that. A lot of cops are like that shit. But
100%.
but
And the only thing that's changed since this story is the frequency with which this thing happens. You know, And the amount of people on the planet, of course, has changed. Our technology has changed, but we're still a very racist society. We're still a very vengeful society. The death penalty is just what we've adapted lynchings into. We just we lynch people with, a syringe rather than a rope. But it's the same concept. Uh, or we lynch them by making them serve 10 years in these hellholes uh, that release people that are way worse than they were when they went in. Like, shouldn't the point of prison to be to reform people? But instead, we we put them in there and they come out like, here's this rape dungeon. Don't do that again. Like,
bro,
what the fuck?
Yeah, man. Fucking, that's the first thing you think of when you think of jail. Like, God damn, I'm gonna go get raped now for whatever I did.
Because it's what it
Yeah.
is.
God damn.
Like, that's not even the worst part of prison. The worst part is, the absolute brutality of murders that happen. I've heard so many people tell me, um, they got out of prison. They had they'd witnessed murders happen, as close as, to them as them standing in line behind somebody at McDonald's. 2 feet away from. They gotta, and then after they see the murder, they gotta sit in their cell, and think about it all night.
Yeah.
I'll think about it for the next few nights. My
Yeah.
brother
Think
was
about
stabbed in prison, actually.
really?
Yeah, he got
Holy shit.
stabbed in the stomach
You know,
because
yeah.
he didn't want to pay. He found, or according to him, he was playing poker and he found out that one of the guys was cheating, and so he refused to pay what was on the table. Whatever he owed him, he refused to
Uh-huh.
pay it. And so, while he's walking to his cell or to his bunk later that day, out of the corner of his eye, he saw somebody coming after him, and they stabbed him. But he was able to move enough away so that it didn't kill him. But he showed it to me. It's like a giant fucking nipple on his belly.
That big, huh? Damn,
Yeah,
dude.
he's like, yeah, they got that fucker in. And he also said when he was in prison that when COVID hit, it hit prisons the worst because so many people are so close, it just spreads like
Oh
fucking
yeah.
wildfire. And there's no, like, unless you're in total isolation, there's pretty much no way to get around it. So they put anybody who caught COVID, they put them in isolation after the fact.
Oh my god.
But he said sure enough, he saw people um gurneyed out of their cells dead from COVID.
Oh shit, dude.
Several times. Luckily, all it did for him was he couldn't taste anything for a week. Same thing that happened to me. But um,
Yeah, what a weird,
those
weird.
are two ways of dealing with people after they commit a crime: is lynching by needle or rape dungeon.
Bro.
Or a serious crime. Anyways, obviously there are smaller crimes. There's everybody's a story unto themselves. My brother had a million fucking social workers and therapists and people trying to work out his fucking problems, and he refused all help. But I don't know. I think it's a story about the lack of kindness in human beings. And
Yeah, the only real kindness is shown from the mass shooter.
yeah,
You
that's
know,
a great point.
it's that's Thomas Wolfe for you, I guess. Like, he does it really carefully though, because he is writing to his town, and to this culture as well. Like, I think he's condemning them in a really kind and like with a light touch. You know what I mean? Even
Yeah,
the scene where well, he doesn't, like I said, he's obviously a great writer, so he doesn't just say like this town was fucking shit. That's why this happened.
right.
He shows it through that guy. He's like, I'm the guy that shot him. I shot him first, right in the eye. We must have put 300
Right.
bullets in him. And then the kid like kind of makes fun of him a little bit.
Yeah.
So the kid is
You
kind of
got
like the
yourself a
voice.
bear, all right.
Yeah. He's like being a sarcastic little prick. So he's like
Yeah.
talking through the kid a little bit, showing
Yeah,
how
that was-
foolish it is to be proud of something like that. Yeah, man.
Nebraska was the kid's name. He wrote another great short story about Nebraska. We'll talk about that some other time. But
Yeah, and he like
that's the point. I mean, that's the point of all of Thomas Wolfe's stories is that we don't show enough kindness to each other, and thus begins all the problems of humanity. Kindness, lack of kindness, and abundance of loneliness.
lack of kindness and abundance of loneliness. Jesus
Yeah.
Christ, Thomas Wolfe. Craig, what are you doing to me, man? What are you doing to me?
Well, you picked Dostoevsky's A Beggar Boy at Christmas Tree, which is really, it's the
Well,
same story, and it's
yes.
society, because society almost always fails the individual. It just does. Just people just fall through the cracks.
Yeah,
And
man. It
you have to
really
wonder if
does.
that's not why the cracks exist in the first place. Is so that people will fall through them.
Right. It's hard not to be paranoid because of how fucked up it's been for how long and how much we know better, and still nothing has changed. Like you said, not a lot has changed in the last 100 years, man. Like in terms of taking care of each other in a really large society, it might be just an impossible thing too. I mean, obviously there's a lot of things we can do. Not to get like political because I'm really bad at talking politics. But yeah, it just seems like it's just sad, man. It's really sad. It makes me feel sad to read this shit.
Feel sad, sure does.
I'm just sitting here having a latte, you know. And I read the story and I started crying for all of humanity.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, it's a bold stance too. I'm gonna write about a mass murderer, but I'm gonna write him in such a way that you kind of root for him. You know, you kind of are like, "Fuck yeah, Dick, go." Fuck this town.
right.
And you write about him. Almost through admiration. Not that he committed these acts, but that because the reason Dick is so good at everything is because he has this drive in him to be perfect and to be good at everything. And
Yeah, and that's how it's written too. When he's shooting, he's described. Even though we're talking about how humanized he is in the story, in that moment, he's described as a well-oiled machine.
yeah,
Just taking aim. His bullets are fucking on point, and when they're not, he corrects it and he hits his target. It's like he's just this fucking well-oiled machine, trained by the U.S. government, and yeah, and he's like he is perfect. Like in that he's like pretty much perfect, described as like a perfect killing machine at the end of the story.
right. And you have to. I mean, war. The guy was clearly saw conflict. He'd clearly been through this all before. And it's like it goes back to Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. Like, why do we teach people to be such great killers and then release them into society and expect anything other than these results? Like, why did we release Charles Manson into society knowing that he'd raped a kid when he was 16 years old and that he'd been raised in orphanages and in juvenile
Right.
detention centers and in prisons?
Yeah, nobody thought, hey, we should, maybe address that. Nah,
He
just throw
has
him in jail for a little while and then he'll be fine.
He has no skills of his own. He doesn't know how to do anything on his own. He doesn't know how to provide. He doesn't know how to work a job and take orders. And he doesn't know anything about human kindness because he's never been shown it in prison or by his family because he had no family. Like, what other results could he have done but to become what he became? And by the way, the army is just another arm of this thing that we're talking about. The quote unquote system. You know,
Yeah. I was thinking about that as you're talking. Like, who goes to the army, man? People with no other fucking option, you know.
Yeah.
And they get out and they go in as fucked up. They get out as fucked up as they were in, like mental. If they have any like problems like that, and they're just a trained killer at that point when they get out. And it's like, god damn, man, we should be careful. uh,
It's a story of so many homeless people. I got out of the army, I got out of prison, and the only thing I knew was how to kill people. Or I can cook a grilled cheese on a radiator, and that's about it.
right.
How are these people supposed to know how to deal with the landlord, or how to pay their vehicle registration, or how to deal with a crazy ass love triangle?
Yeah,
How to
or
like
how to deal with not being loved, like period. How about that one?
how to live
That's
alone.
how to live alone. Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on this story, man,
I'm
that we
glad you read
missed?
it. Did
Yeah.
you want to talk about anything?
Um. Yeah. I think like just to kind of go back to Earth a little bit before we stop talking about it. The way it's written is fucking weird, man. Like I was kind of hinting at it at the beginning, but it's messy. You know what I mean? Like this is a really fucking messy story. It's omniscient, I guess.
Yeah.
It's jumping all over the place. You think it's going to be a story about the kids, and it becomes about Dick, and then it's about the town, and it's like about so many different things. So, like I said earlier when I first was reading it, I'm like, what the fuck? What's the point of this? And of course we got into that and everything, but just the way it's written is just kind of it's really like, I guess Thomas Wolfe is, he doesn't give a fuck, he just is, he's not like trying to do anything, he's just kind of like writing free. It's like very free form fiction, and I just wanted to mention that because it's like you said left hook at the beginning, like everything is kind of like it comes out of left field a little bit, like I said, at first we're following the kids, then we're following Dick a little bit, and then we're kind of just talking about nature, and not only nature but like the nature of humanity, and then it goes into the main scene of the story, which is written kind of like a news report or something. It's like not a news report, it's like a report though, of an amalgamation of the towns witnessing this happen.
Yes.
And then the ending, it kind of it goes into that little like very minute scene with the guy who said I shot him first, and then it of course goes back into like the nature of humanity, and kind of ends the story there, that like the duality of man and this weird, and also he just throws in like a couple poems, or he throws in the psalm, I think the Bible verse, then he throws in that poem, tiger tiger burning bright in the forest of the night, with a mortal hand or eye could shape thy fearful symmetry. What the hammer, what the chain, and what firmest was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grass, blah, blah, blah. It's a cool little thing, but it's like he just like throws it in there. He's like, I don't give a fuck. This is my story. I'll do whatever. But it does. That's the weird thing. Like just doing that kind of like random little poem, like influenced how he like resolved to end the story, and it gave the story its name too.
Why not? Why not throw a poem in? People. It's another thing to think about when you're writing, especially for me, is if you're writing about a really reflective character who's well read. I mean, we can go to Sabbath. How many times? I mean, when you read that book again, read it with an eye of how many times Sabbath makes an allusion to either a literary figure or an art figure, um, or multiple at the same time.
Right.
I mean, the cover of the book was made by a painter named Otto Dix, and of course, Sabbath was based on the life of a painter, who I think is more
Oh, really?
like
I didn't know
Otto.
that.
Yeah, he was based on a puppeteer and a painter. No, not a puppeteer, but a painter. But I think he was influenced heavily by Otto Dix's life, and it's something that deepens the complexity of the piece. Charles was it? Who wrote that poem? It wasn't Charles Whitman. It was or Walt Whitman. It was the other guy. Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright. I know this poet.
Hang on, I'll look it up. I don't know.
Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright. William Blake.
Oh, Blake.
Yeah.
Oh, right. We read this way back in the day. I remember now.
Yeah. I actually wrote a whole report. I don't think it was on this poem, but it was on another one of his. Great poet.
The way he rhymes I with symmetry always burned in my brain and like made me mad. But I guess you could do whatever the fuck you want at the end of the day when it comes to writing. Who knew? I mean, maybe that's how they pronounced symmetry back then. Symmetry.
So,
actually, it sounds about right for a Brit.
I was listening to my podcast, not this podcast, but another podcast yesterday, and it was the one with Amazing Atheist. He was talking about how people he knew so many artists who went to art, like had this really unique style of painting and seeing the world, and then they go to art school and they lose it and they start painting like everybody else.
Okay.
And I think that it's important because Thomas Wolfe was writing at a time where there weren't a whole lot of conventions when it came to short stories. My favorite short story in the world, one that we keep talking about in this podcast, The Lost Boy, which is the other side of Thomas Wolfe, literally has in it 15 pages of just two letters being written, one by his sister and one by his mom.
So that's what I'm thinking of when I'm like, he's just kind of free in it. Like he's free in this and to do whatever the fuck he wants. And when you start doing shit like that, it comes out it makes it way more complicated and interesting. And I think it works in this story too. But yeah, like if you brought this to a workshop, it's gonna get torn apart because it's fucking messy. There's weird shit all over the place. I mean, ignoring the subject matter and how that wouldn't fly as well, but just how it's written,
it would get torn apart even for that too. I mean, but there's so much beauty and artistry in how fucking weird the story is. There's also nothing else like it. Nobody else could write this story. If you wrote it today, it would come out like Uwe Boll. Like I said, it would come out like that Postman or whatever the fuck, where you'd be writing about how angry the guy was and how much delight he took in loading his AR-15 and taking aim at that old dick there who'd been breathing down his neck all week, and his face became a battered batch of stomped raspberries as he unloaded his clip into his head. It would just sound like shit, but and the points wouldn't be delivered as like that's part of the artistry also is you want to keep reading this thing. You don't want to keep reading it out of some feeling of filling your macabre fantasies. It's more like I need to keep reading this because I need to know what happened to Dick because I care about Dick. Like I said, that's the great majesty of this story. That's the great, artistry of the story is you care about Dick as a person. And it's because Dick cares about people in his life. And, he was trying to do his best until he broke. And by the way, that's the other point of this story is we got people all over this planet what's his name? Harry Crews wrote a beautiful essay about it, climbing the tower. We have so many people who are resisting with all their might, not becoming Charles Whitman, not becoming Nicholas Cruz, not becoming Columbine killers, and and while they're resisting it, they're trying to do their best.
Wait, what happens in climbing a tower?
Harry Crews climbing the tower, where he's talking like we're all Charles Whitman climbed the Texas Observatory Tower and shot 12 people. You remember this? It's your favorite
Yeah,
thing about
yeah.
Harry Crews. And he wrote a whole novel essentially about this called A Feast of Snakes. But the point
Wait, wait.
being,
Well, I remember Feast of Snakes a little better. The story is like eluding me though. Maybe we should read that one next.
climbing the tower is really short, but we could talk about it. It just starts with him talking about learning of his own mortality, and then he goes to the University of Texas, and a professor is like, "Yeah, it's over there. They started dropping." He's like,
Right,
very Cruz, just like, "I don't want to hear this. I do not want to hear about this." He's like, "Then they started dropping over there and over there and over there.
right,
We
right.
had to close the tower down because students kept climbing to the top and jumping off." you know,
Jeez.
and didn't do no good though. Now they just jump off the stadium. Works just as well. It, it's this really weird thing in humanity that's
Yeah, yeah, I remember now. I forgot it's a nonfiction story by him.
correct.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, all
But
right.
my point being, so few people could. I don't know if I can't remember another story I've read except for Feast of Snakes where a writer said about humanizing one of these mass murderers, one of these people that goes off the brink. Um, sure they exist, but uh,
Yeah, it's a weird fucking story, man.
and you root for these people. Like, how the fuck do you root for somebody like that? But that's the thing. All right, so why do I like this story? I'll explain why. Or not in a gesture, but in a description of a gesture. Nicholas Cruz shoots up Parkland High School, which is less than 10 miles from where I teach at FAU. Uh,
Yep.
I think at the time I think it was the most, but since then, like it was 17 kids it killed, but since then it's gone up to like 60. Uh, is the most in this country. The Las Vegas shooter. But I'm watching the court proceedings with Nicholas Cruz, 19-year-old kid. Everybody in the court, everybody, the judge, the people in the back, the cops there, they all have this really awkward body posture. And what it
Okay.
is they're all resisting the urge to this fucking lynch this kid because everybody in that room is disgusted humanly by him. Just revolted by him.
Yeah.
Revolted by what he like. Watch some of these court documentaries and see if you don't notice the difference. Like there's just a more relaxed body posture when they don't know what the person's done, or when they're in there for just some tedious
You just
bullshit.
see the anger welling in everybody once
It's
they
just welling in
realize
every.
who this kid is.
It's not just anger, but it's human revulsion, and they want to get away from them. Um, there's there's like just like they're fighting the urge to they're cringing in their fucking boots. But his lawyer, this older woman, uh, the news reporters are talking over the video footage, so I can't hear what anybody's saying. But his lawyer puts her hand on his shoulder and leans forward and whispers to him
Hmm.
something. And the hand on his shoulder is that of like utter sympathy. Like you can just see it in her body posture, even though you can't see it in anyone else's. She feels
Wild.
terribly about this kid, because because he's a kid, because he's fucking 19, And you can tell by his face, by the way, that there's something utterly broken in him, and it's not just the acts that he just committed. It's something even deeper than that. It's, he's partially, probably mentally handicapped.
Right.
It's once again society failed this kid, and it was so jarring to me. I remember it even now that there was somebody in that courtroom that cared about this fucking kid to whatever extent she could. In a room full of people that wanted to lynch him. And I was thankful, by the way, because, if this were 100 years ago, we would have lynched him. We would have
Yeah.
fucking beaten the kid up and shot him full of holes. I don't know if, once again, I don't know if sending him to the rape dungeon's any better. And I don't know if there is an answer, by the way, for what do we do with these people. I don't know if that answer is I don't have it. I don't know what we fucking do with them. I don't know how to, like, the only way that I know how to prevent it is to just say we got to be kinder to each other. I don't know if even that's gonna, like, even if we all did that, I don't know if that would stop the anomaly from happening. But
Right. Well, also it's like, be kind. How if some kid,
yeah,
is
what does
12
kind
years
even
old
mean?
and he's mentally, unstable, what do you do? Do the parents have money? First of all, do they have money to treat him? Because if they don't,
Right.
well, sorry.
There you go.
Then you can't do shit. Somebody has a
There's
drug
a kid.
problem. What do? You send
Yeah.
them to rehab. Well, do you have money? Sorry, there's no institution for that, really. I mean, there are like little programs here and there, but it's not enough. It's not comprehensive enough. We don't understand it enough to treat it either.
First, you have to want to change. First the kid has to want to change.
Right.
A guy that I had arrested for going into women's bathrooms and taking pictures of them. He had just gotten out of jail. First day of school. By the way, I'm going to be looking for him next week because once again, it's the first. School's starting again.
Yeah.
And I teach in the same building.
Yeah, and it's your job, by the way, Craig.
Yeah, I guess so.
Nobody else gives a
so.
fuck.
I guess fucking so. But he just got out of jail and he went back, and he just went right back to fucking prison. My brother did the same thing, by the way. A chance after chance after chance after chance. We would have sent him to any rehab on the planet that we could possibly afford, even the ones that we couldn't afford. We would have done anything, but he lost the will to change. In fact, he wanted, like, his will was driven towards the opposite. So,
Yeah.
anyway, that's all I have to say about it.
All right, cool.
So, what did you want to?
I'm happy to have talked about it and to have read it finally, and now I have to read the other 900 things that I need to read. So we're well on our way. This is the 10th one we've done, by the way, in recent memory. So it's freaking awesome. And I don't know. Next time, I don't know if I actually want to talk about that story now that you mention it, because it's another like kind of mass shooting thing. But
it's not.
But yeah, it was definitely a great essay. Anyway,
It's definitely worth talking about in light of this one.
for some reason, I've been like thinking Ron Carlson. I don't know if you really want to talk about Ron
Oh,
Carlson.
hell yeah. We'll definitely talk some Ron Carlson.
I mean, I have to pick one. Obviously, like a Kind of Flying would be great to just maybe refresh since it's only like 2 pages long.
Yeah, we'll do a Kind of Flying and we'll do something else.
Yeah, something else. I'm trying to think which one, like Keith maybe.
It would be great.
There's another one though. I'm forgetting. I'm having trouble remembering the name, but not Hotel Eden. But I'll figure it out and I'll let you know, and it won't be anything too crazy. We'll just kind of flying at something else.
Sounds great, man.
Oh, and real quick, so what I've done is I just uploaded the next one, but I scheduled it for like midnight, so like midnight on Sunday, like in a few hours, basically. And I think I'm just gonna put them all for every week on Sunday. Does that make sense to you? Does that sound good?
Sounds perfect, buddy.
All right, and I actually have some software on my computer that I can use to make it a little easier. It actually connects directly to YouTube. I don't know why I have access to this. It's like Adobe Premiere Rush. It's like basically a stripped down version of Adobe Premiere. But for our purposes, it works great because we're just putting an image on our audio and uploading it to YouTube. So it lets me do that. and it'll make it a lot easier.
Sounds good, man.
But yeah, all right.
All right, buddy.
All right, man. It's good talking to you again. Let's. I guess we'll just continue on Wednesday since we're a little behind anyway. But let's keep it going. Keep the thing going.
It might have to be at a different time, but I can still.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'll figure it out. Or
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
we'll just do it in my office. I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, dude. Maybe not. You don't want to get fired your first week because you said something, you know.
Yeah.
Let them fire
I
you
also-
10
I
years
also
from now
don't
when they
want to,
discover this podcast.
I don't want us to start and then have some student knock on my door and ask me a million questions.
Yeah, that's always a possibility.
We'll figure something else out. All right.
Hell yes. But yeah, just let me know what time. If we have to change today, it's fine too. Just we'll figure it out. All right.
All right, buddy.
All right, man. Later.
Peace.